Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Burn the RuleBook podcast. This is the podcast where we break down menopause, mental health, and relationships one truth at a time. I'm Rachel Boyle, a licensed couples therapist, sex therapist, and certified menopause specialist. And today, I want to talk to you about anxiety and how it can start or get worse in perimenopause. So if you found yourself feeling more anxious, panicky, irritable, or like your brain just doesn't click the way it used to, then this episode is for you, even if you've never struggled with anxiety before. And here's what you'll learn in this episode: what's really happening to your brain during menopause and why it's not just in your head, and the truth about hormone replacement therapy and how it may help with mood and anxiety. And finally, you're going to learn some simple science-backed tools to help calm your nervous system and get you feeling more like yourself again. So today we're going to be talking about perimenopause and menopause and anxiety. So let's start with what's really going on beneath the surface. So there's some really good information out there about how menopause affects moods and the brain. And so one of the leading researchers, her name is Dr. Lisa Mosconi, and she talks about menopause. It's not just a hormonal transition, it's a neurological one as well. And in her book, The Menopause Brain, she explains how the drop in estrogen impacts key areas of the brain responsible for mood, memory, and emotional regulation, specifically the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And so your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that's responsible for things like curiosity, problem solving, tracking time. And these are things that become a struggle whenever you're in perimenopause or menopause. So these changes, especially the wild fluctuations that happen during perimenopause, can make you feel anxious, overwhelmed, edgy, even if you've never had anxiety before. So what I tell people when it comes to anxiety is in perimenopause and menopause, you can get anxiety if you've never had it before. If you've had anxiety in the past, it can actually get worse during this time. And what's so interesting is that Dr. Mosconi, she's done brain imaging studies. And what they found is that there's a huge uptick in the amount of estrogen receptors in the brain. And that is because those estrogen receptors are trying to find more estrogen. Because in perimenopause, right, your estrogen gets erratic and it drops. And then once you reach menopause, then the estrogen goes down almost to zero. And so why that's so important is because estrogen is a neuroendocrine modulator. So it helps things function like serotonin and dopamine, which help regulate calm, focus, and motivation. So if you're suddenly snapping at your partner or spiraling at 3 a.m. for no reason, remember that you're not going crazy, that these things are really happening, and there's science now to explain this. So sometimes I'll have clients ask me about HRT, hormone replacement therapy. So that is definitely an option. And HRT is something that's been really misunderstood since the WHI came out over 20 years ago. But Dr. Avram Blooming has written a book called Estrogen Matters, and he has spent decades researching the benefits of estrogen therapy. And he argues that the risks of HRT have been very much overstated, and that for many women, estrogen replacement can actually reduce anxiety, stabilize mood, and even protect cognitive health. That said, HRT is not a magic fix, but the thing to remember is if you're struggling with mood swings or anxiety, you need to talk to your doctor. And if your doctor doesn't understand the link between anxiety and perimenopause or hormones, then it's time for you to find a trained provider. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot of trained providers out there right now. I talk about this in a previous episode, but you do want to find someone who's specifically trained in women's sexual health. Now, in addition to HRT, there are other tools for calming the nervous system, and I'm going to teach you a few of them today. And these are powerful, they're evidence-based ways to regulate anxiety and support your nervous system. And they come from the trauma therapy that I'm trained in, along with polyvagal theory and mindfulness, stress reduction. So these are some of the techniques that I teach my clients. So the first one that I'm going to talk about today is called bilateral stimulation. Bilateral stimulation is when you move one side of your body and then the other side of your body. And so that might be something like walking. When you walk, it's a natural bilateral movement. Also, swimming is a natural bilateral movement, or you can tap on your shoulders like this, or you can tap your feet, left, right, left, right. And that activates both sides of the brain and can bring your nervous system into a more calm space. Now, I recommend if you're going to do walking, to go out for at least a 10-minute walk when you're feeling anxious. And not only the rhythm of your feet hitting the ground, that's that back and forth calming motion, but also your body's in motion, your body is moving. So as humans, movement is one of the ways that we process emotions, and exercise, even if it's going for a 10-minute walk, can really, really help with anxiety. Because when you have anxiety, you actually have higher levels of cortisol in your body. You've got higher levels of epinephrine and norepinephrine. And so moving your body can help get that moved out. So anxiety happens whenever our body goes into, fight or flight, which means that our muscles are preparing themselves to either run or to fight. So that's why the cortisol, the epinephrine, and a norepinephrine gets released into our bodies, is preparing our muscles to move. So exercise, especially a bilateral exercise, is going to be really good for helping you with anxiety. Now, the next thing that's going to be really good for you is to do a breathing exercise. The breathing exercises that I start off teaching people is called box breathing exercise. And the reason that it's called box breathing is because your breath work is in the shape of the box. Now, what that looks like is you're going to inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Then you're going to hold your breath for 4 seconds. You're going to exhale through your mouth for 4 seconds. And then you're going to hold your breath for 4 seconds. And then you're going to do it again. So you're going to inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. So you can count. Inhale to the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, exhale to the count of 4, and hold to the count of 4. So you want to do that for about 2 minutes. That's going to slow down your heart rate. So when you slow down your breathing, you slow down your heart rate, and that sends a signal to your brain that you're safe. And that's a great way to shift out of that fight or flight mode and into what is called rest and digest mode. So when you're in rest and digest mode, you're activating a different part of your autonomic nervous system, which helps you get to that feeling of calmness. Now, there's another grounding technique that can help you become present in the moment. And I call this the 5 senses technique. So first of all, you're going to look at, what can I see? So you're going to look at, maybe something on the wall. What can I hear? What can I smell? What can I feel? And then what can I taste? Right? So sometimes we can't taste something, but you at least do all 4 senses. And you want to tune in to those in as much detail as you can. So if you're looking at something like, let's say that you see a candle on the wall, what's the color of the candle? What's the texture of the candle on the wall? Does the candle have a scent, right? If I'm hearing something, well, what am I hearing? Is it the sound of birds outside? What is the tone of the bird? Is it a loud sound? Is it a soft sound? So you want to get as detailed as you can with the 5 senses. And I always tell people with anxiety to carry a piece of gum or some kind of lozenge with them wherever they go, because you can put that in your mouth and now you have something to taste. And the chewing motion or the swallowing motion, if you have a lozenge instead of a piece of gum, can help to activate that rest and digest side of your nervous system. Now, these may sound simple, and they are simple, but they actually work. These are science, evidence-based techniques that are taught in therapy, and it brings you back into the present moment and out of the future-focused anxiety spiral. So most people, when they have anxiety, they are not in the present moment. Anxiety is mostly a future fear of something that's going to happen. And sometimes we just have anxiety in our body, right? And we don't know why. But whenever you focus in on the present moment, you can start to recognize right here, right now, I'm safe, right? Right here, right now, in this moment, I am safe. And once you start to recognize that, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for all that cortisol to process out of your body. So you can start to feel calm, and just know, depending on how anxious you get, right? If you're a little anxious, not as much cortisol to process out of the body. So you can feel better in a couple minutes. But if you're really feeling a lot of anxiety, on maybe the verge of feeling panicky, that can take 10 to 15 minutes for that cortisol to just process out of the body. So just keep doing the exercises. Start with 2 minutes. And if that doesn't help, then just keep doing it. It can take up to 10 to 15 minutes. Now, what I want you to know is that there is actually stuff happening with your brain, right? So you're not imagining these things. So remember, you're not crazy. It's just your body is changing, and it's because of what's happening with your hormones. And menopause isn't just about aging. It's a neurological and a hormonal shift that impacts your brain, your body, your emotions, and your identity. So remember, you're not weak, and you're not being dramatic, and you're not broken. You're navigating a major transformation, and you deserve compassionate, informed care. So here's what you can do next if you start to notice that anxiety has started to creep in. First of all, I want you to track your symptoms. When are you getting anxiety? Is it happening if you're still having a regular cycle, is it happening in different times of your cycle? Because remember, you can still have a regular cycle in perimenopause. How much sleep are you getting? So if you're struggling with sleep, the anxiety can get worse. I also want you to explore HRT with a menopause trained provider and incorporate these daily practices into your life, which is walking, breath work, and grounding exercise. If that is not working, then I want you to find a trauma-informed therapist who understands the intersection of hormones and anxiety. And finally, remember, you don't have to go through this alone. Now, if you have found benefit from what I've shared with you today, make sure to follow the show, leave a review, and share this with a friend who might be struggling. And if you want to dive in deeper, you can check the show notes for links to the books I referenced today by Dr. Mosconi and Dr. Blooming.